Ever have that moment where, like, a project you're really into takes this hard left turn out of nowhere?
Yeah, definitely.
That's kind of what we're diving into today.
Mm.
It's the Godot engine, the whole blow up with their community, and then this entirely new engine pops up because of it.
Yeah, it's a story with some layers to it, that's for sure.
Okay, so for our listeners who maybe haven't been glued to this whole thing, can you kind of set the scene?
Sure. Imagine you're a game dev, right? And you're hearing all this buzz about Godot. Free, open source, meaning anyone can jump in and mess with the code, make it their own. People are doing some really creative stuff with it.
Right, it's got this rep as being super accessible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's all this goodwill, and then out of nowhere, the Godot team tweets, "We're a woke engine."
And woke is loaded, to put it mildly.
Totally. Instant line in the sand. You can't just drop a word like that, especially in this day and age, without expecting some fireworks.
And fireworks there were. It wasn't just a few angry tweets either. It blew UP. People felt like they were blindsided, right?
Big time. It's like, I signed on for an engine, not a political manifesto.
Yeah. Like, can't we just make games? So what happens next? Because it's not like everyone just shrugged it off.
No, not at all. And this is where things go from bad to worse. So you've got developers, some who've been with Godot since the early days, voicing their concerns. Some are polite, some less so. But instead of, opening a dialogue, the Godot team starts blocking people.
Wait, seriously? They just went straight to blocking.
Yeah. And not just like obvious trolls. We're talking people who were financially supporting the project. That's a pretty bold move.
Talk about a way to escalate things. It's like they wanted to pour gasoline on the fire.
And then, to make matters even spicier, their community manager at the time, Xana, starts getting really vocal. And I mean, really vocal.
This is the same Xana who already had a reputation, right?
Oh, yeah. Not exactly known for holding back. But even for them, this was something else. Started calling critics vermin, among other choice words.
Wow, not exactly a recipe for productive conversation.
Nope. And you've got to remember, this is open source. The whole ethos is about collaboration, community. When you start using language like that, it just shuts down any chance of having a real discussion. It's us versus them.
So at this point, Godot's really dug themselves into a hole. What do they do next? Apologize. Backpedal.
You'd think, right. Instead, the Godot Foundation, which is like the organization behind the engine, they put out this apology that didn't really do what apologies are supposed to do.
Meaning?
Instead of taking any responsibility, they basically painted themselves as the victims of harassment.
Oh, so the classic deflection tactic. We're not the problem, you are.
Exactly. Which, again, just made the community even more furious.
Okay.
Imagine pouring your time, your energy, your passion into this project, only to be told you're the bad guy for speaking up.
Yeah, not a good look. So how did people react to that? Did anyone buy it?
Oh, people were fuming. Godot's Steam reviews, which were overwhelmingly positive before all this, absolutely tanked. People were sharing stories of getting banned from the forums for, like, the most innocuous comments.
It sounds like it was just a complete meltdown.
Pretty much. It was like watching this slow-motion train wreck,
Yeah.
and nobody knew how to stop it.
But then, just when you thought things couldn't get any weirder, just when you thought, okay, it can't get any crazier than this, right? Someone goes and digs up this blog post, and it's written by Godot's creator, Juan Linietsky. And let me tell you, it did not help the situation.
Yeah, this wasn't just like, here are my thoughts on game design. This was a whole thing.
Whole thing, how?
Okay, so he gets into some pretty strong opinions about capitalism, the gaming industry as a whole. For example, he talks about mobile gaming as, like, this system where people are just compulsively consuming to escape how miserable they are.
Ooh, subtlety wasn't really his strong suit, huh? And the timing of this resurfacing.
Yeah.
You couldn't script it better. Seriously. It's like everyone's already freaking out that Godot's pushing an agenda, and then bam. Here's the creator basically confirming those suspicions in his own words.
And it's not just what he said, but what he didn't say during all this, right? Like, zero response to the actual controversy.
Exactly. Complete radio silence, which, again, just made everything worse. It's like, you want to talk about ideology, here's mine, but I'm not going to engage with any of you about it.
The irony is almost painful.
Yeah.
So where does RAW Engine fit into all of this? Because that's the other half of this whole saga. So for people who might not be super familiar with open source, there's this thing called forking. Basically, it's when someone takes the existing code of a project and uses it to create something new. They're not just copying it. They're branching off, making their own version. Think of it like you have the blueprints to a house, and you decide, I'm going to build off of this, but make it my own.
So it's like taking the foundation and building something completely different on top of it.
Exactly. And that's what happened with RAW Engine. You have all these developers who are just like fed up with Godot. They see this blog post, the lack of communication, the blocking, and they're like, we can do this better.
So they take Godot's code and they just start over.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But they're very clear about their mission. They want to get back to what Godot US sees to be about. Open development, a welcoming community, and most importantly, they wanted to make it explicitly clear they were about creating games and leaving politics at the door.
Which, I mean, depending on where you fall on the spectrum, that's either going to sound amazing or like a red flag. Right?
For sure. But it definitely hit a nerve. Like, RAW Engine became this rallying point for all these devs who are just over the drama.
And it wasn't just a couple of people, right? It seemed like everyone was suddenly talking about RAW Engine.
It was huge E. There's this one quote from a well-known game dev, Artur, that sums it up perfectly. He said, "The next few days will be interesting to watch. RAW Engine is releasing soon. Thousands of eyes are curiously watching how many bold indies will capitalize on the attention and try to be the first game on this engine." He saw it coming a mile away.
He totally called it. It was like watching the underdog rise up and challenge the champ. And the coolest part was it was more than just hype.
Oh, yeah. This wasn't just about jumping on the hot new thing. You had developers who were so ready for a Godot alternative that they were literally offering to bring their own tech to RAW Engine to make it better.
Like what kind of tech are we talking about?
I remember one developer who was working on this other engine, Spartan Engine, and they were like, hey, if it means a better future for game development, I'll bring my whole rendering system over to RAW.
That's commitment.
Wow. Talk about putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
So you've got Godot kind of reeling from this whole mess, and RAW Engine is over here picking up steam, getting support left and right. What happens next? Because I got to imagine Godot doesn't just sit back and watch this happen.
Mm-hmm.
So RAW Engine is just over there doing its own thing, trying to not step on any toes. And Godot's got to be in damage control mode, right?
Well, I think so, right?
Yeah, like what do you even DO at that point?
Well, they tried this whole unban appeal thing for anyone who got blocked in all that early chaos.
Okay, so like an olive branch, come on back, let's be friends.
Kind of, but even that got kind of weird.
Oh. How so? To even appeal your ban, you had to give them your email address.
See, that's where I'd be like, hold on a minute.
Yeah, not exactly standard practice.
And this is where it gets even more sus, right? Because remember, Nets, that community manager, the one who is really pushing that whole woke engine thing hard.
Oh yeah, I remember them.
Well, right before they went dark on Twitter, they made this post that was telling, to say the least.
Oh, what'd they say?
They'd been saving everyone's replies, any criticism of Godot, and they called them the silliest replies, and that they'd figure out what to do with this collection of brain rot later.
Collection of brain rot. Wow. Talk about condescending.
Right, like those are your users you're talking about. But also the timing of it, right after they're demanding everyone's email address for these unban appeals.
Yeah, you got to wonder if those two things were connected somehow. Like, were they planning on targeting people even more?
Exactly. It just felt icky all around. And then, as if things couldn't get weirder, Nets decides to go after this YouTuber, Asmongold, who'd been pretty vocal about, well, all of this.
What, like a Twitter beef?
It gets weirder. So Nets basically demands proof that Asmongold, like, showers?
They demanded proof of showering.
I know, right? Who even does that? And the thing is, Asmongold, bless their heart, they actually play along. They post a shower meme like, here you go.
No way. They actually did
Yeah,
it.
oh, yeah. And it gets better. Nets replies with, and I quote, "Granted, did not expect you to follow through, though that's cool. Now that we've seen face-to-face, can you acknowledge that making content based off of other people's drama is not really doing anything good for the world?"
Face to face after a meme.
It's like, what reality are we living in right now? But see, that's the thing. The whole exchange was just so tone-deaf.
Totally. Like, instead of actually addressing any of the criticisms, any of the concerns that Asmongold brought up, they just try to shut him down.
Oh.
Right? It's like, how dare you talk about this? You're just stirring up drama.
The irony is just chef's kiss.
Totally. It's this complete lack of self-awareness. Like, they missed the whole memo about open source being built on community feedback, good or bad.
Exactly. So here we are, right? Godot's reputation is, shall we say, tarnished, and RAW Engine is over there picking up the pieces, proving that there's a real need for something different, something more open and community-driven. What a ride, huh?
It's a wild story, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it goes beyond just Godot and RAW Engine. It really highlights this tension that's happening in the open source world in general.
How so?
Well, you've got these passionate communities who pour their hearts into these projects, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got the creators who sometimes, let's just say, they lose sight of what made these projects special in the first place.
It's that whole control thing, isn't it? Like, they created it so they think they own it, even though it's open source, which by its very nature is about collaboration and sharing.
Nailed it. It's this weird power dynamic that can really poison a community if it's not kept in check. And I think what we're seeing with Godot, with RAW Engine popping up as this alternative, it's a sign that things are changing.
So what does the future hold? Is this the end of Godot? Does RAW Engine become the new king?
It's too early to tell, really. But I think the bigger takeaway here is open source isn't just about the code anymore. It's about the values, the communication, the community building something together. And that's something worth fighting for?
Absolutely. Well said. And that, my friends, is our deep dive into the wild world of Godot, RAW Engine, and the future of open source. It's a messy, complicated story, but hey, that's the world we live in, right? Thanks for joining us for this one. It's been a wild ride.